We knew entering this season that Justin Fields would need to show improvement for the Chicago Bears to really commit to him as their long-term franchise quarterback. So far, he's playing a lot better since he got back from the hand injury, but has he shown enough improvement, or do the Chicago Bears still need to see more?
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is Locked On Bears, and I'm your host, Lauren Cox. I'm here to bring you your daily, in-depth Chicago Bears news and analysis. You can follow me on Twitter at CoxSports1. You can follow Locked On Bears on all of your favorite social media platforms. You can find the podcast free and available anywhere you can get your podcasts, and YouTube, where you can check out our video podcasts as well. Thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. On the show today, we look at the progress Justin Fields has made, particularly in the 3 games since he's been back from the hand injury, and look at where that growth has been and what we still need to see from Justin Fields, and how that makes the big picture quarterback evaluation conversation a little bit messy in terms of how much is enough improvement. What does he need to do besides just score points and win games? Because that is part of the equation, but scoring points and winning games is an offensive stat as a whole. But individually, how do we separate like what he does mechanically, decision-making wise, and just general quarterbacking versus the team having success with him at quarterback, and how we weigh that with the potential for a rookie quarterback, one of the top guys in the upcoming NFL draft. Let's start with where the progress has definitely been real for Justin Fields. There's no doubt he's playing some of the best football of his NFL career right now. Maybe the best NFL football of his career, really settling in nicely, and this Bears offense is playing well as a result. We've seen him be able to really stay in the pocket and make downfield throws consistently, go through a progression, get to the open receiver, and find him. We've seen him been able to load up and hit deep shots down the field, explosive plays generated for this Bears offense, like all things that we've seen him do at times earlier in his Bears career, but haven't necessarily seen him do this regularly, this consistently from start to finish in multiple football games. He's commanding the offense well at the line of scrimmage. You're not seeing a lot of players not lining up in the right places or horrible protection issues. There's always, at times mistakes there, but in terms of getting things called and getting things in order, having a lot of problems with delay of games or wasted timeouts to get plays in. Fields is commanding this offense, looking more confident doing so, being more on the same page with his receivers, while also continuing to do the things he's done well all along in terms of being able to escape pressure with his legs, create explosive plays with his legs, both as part of the running game and also part of the passing game, scrambling outside of the pocket. He's doing pretty much all the dynamic things that we've known he's been able to do with his legs, and then adding more consistency in the passing game. And that feels like, on paper, when you say it out loud in a vacuum, that should be enough from Fields to say, all right, it's kind of what you wanted, right? It was do more passing while also doing all the good running stuff. But it's not always as simple as just okay, you look at his stats over the last 17 games and he's got, 3,000 passing yards. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but it's and a really good touchdown to interception ratio. Plus you add all of the rushing stats, and it's see, that's the production of a good NFL quarterback. And I think that's very true. I don't think anyone is denying that Justin Fields, no one's saying Justin Fields is not playing well. But we started to talk about yesterday, and I want to get into more on the podcast today, the question isn't, is Justin Fields playing well or not well? And that's how you decide. No, is Justin Fields playing so well that you feel comfortable passing on a number one overall pick at the quarterback spot, which is a different bar, right? This is, for Justin Fields, it's not, is he an NFL quality quarterback? Is he a starting quarterback in the NFL? Yes or no? The question is what we're getting from Justin Fields, what we're seeing from Justin Fields, better than your alternative option that's handed to you on a silver platter, right? The discussion would be different if the Bears didn't have the number one overall pick. If the Bears were sitting 10th, had one first-round pick that was 10th overall, where you don't really have a shot at any of the top quarterbacks, we're not really having this discussion, right? I don't think we're discussing should the Bears trade up for a quarterback. It's like, no, Fields is good enough. Just roll with that. But the conversation is number one overall pick quarterback and whether Justin Fields can be as good / better than what that number one overall pick quarterback could be. And maybe you can start to talk yourself into a few different paths here where it's like, okay, Fields is playing better right now, unequivocally some of the best football of his career in the NFL. And it still feels like the offense isn't perfectly tailored, scheme-wise is not everything for Fields right now, that presumably whether Matt Eberflus comes back or not, you're likely to have a new offensive coordinator one way or another, and that maybe you could get an offensive coordinator that can do a little bit more for Fields, because you're still seeing plays where, as far as the progression goes, there's not really always a play for Fields to go. There's not always a route that's there for him. There's not always a route that's there for him early enough when pressure starts to get there. You're still seeing, weird plays in terms of guys blocking the same player on plays where like the guys aren't getting their assignments correctly, blocking in areas in the running game. And there's just different aspects of this offense that don't always feel like it's perfectly aligned and dialed in just yet. There's areas where it feels like, man, you really could be doing a little bit more to help any quarterback in this situation. This isn't just like Fields needs more help. That's not necessarily purely the equation. It's that there are things that are just sort of like universally not always clock clicking right. Like, when you see him go through the progression, like the routes that's first, second to third, like are not there where they're supposed to be all the time. And guys are still not running to maybe the right depths, and guys running to the same space and not having enough spacing in routes. Like there's still offensive scheme questions here to where you can talk yourself into saying, okay, Fields has gotten better. The weapons around him have gotten better. And so if you come into next offseason, when you add Marvin Harrison Jr. or, other playmakers for Fields and maybe a better offensive coordinator, can that be the next jump up in improvement for Fields to take even another step forward and be even better and be that's really the guy then who will for sure be better than the number one overall pick type quarterback, as opposed to now where, he's playing a lot better, but you're still wondering, is he better than that number one overall pick type quarterback? Because in this process, there are still things Fields needs to get better at, still things that we've wanted to see Fields get better at over time, that he hasn't quite fully taken that step forward, which again, maybe better coaches could work on some of these mechanical issues that we'll talk about and help get him still better still. Like that I think it's also fair to say what we're seeing from Fields right now doesn't have to be his ceiling either. So let's look at what we still want to see Fields get better at and talk about how important those are versus maybe they're not that important and you can live with it and say, this is good enough. We'll take Fields as the quarterback. Next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook, America's number one sportsbook. If you've not bet with FanDuel before, now is a great time to get in on the fun because, hey, the season's you're running out of time, so you better get on it because otherwise you're running out of this season for you. But if you've never bet with FanDuel before, right now you're going to get $150 in bonus bets when you place any winning $5 money line bet. You bet $5 on one team to win, straight up. Doesn't matter how big of a favorite or underdog they are. If that team wins, you get your winnings for that $5 bet plus $150 in bonus bets. So if you want to bet on Bears-Browns, Bears are plus 150 odds. Browns are minus 178 on that money line. The spread is Bears plus 3.5 on the road. You win your $5 moneyline bet, $150 in bonus bet. So it's a great time to get started with FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get in on the fun this NFL season before it's too late. FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. We're seeing a lot of great improvement from Justin Fields, and I don't want to overlook that. I don't want to downplay that. I don't want to discredit that or take anything away from improvement from Fields is a lot of what we wanted to see. But there are still areas of his game where, even as he's played better, we haven't necessarily seen growth in every area. Or maybe it's more like enough growth in every area. Because there are certainly plays where everything is perfect. The footwork is perfect. The progression read is perfect. The arm angle is perfect. The ball placement is perfect. And it's like, wow, there's Justin Fields, right? It's not about like, oh, he never does X or he never does Y correctly. It's about like how often he does it. And I'm not necessarily seeing significant enough improvements in how often, for example, the footwork, right? Is the footwork totally derailing anything he can do as a quarterback? Absolutely not. But you still see throws where the footwork does cause him to miss, right? Or it'll either A, cause him to be late, or B, cause him to be inaccurate. There was a throw to the sideline that he overshot. There was a dagger route to DJ Moore over the middle of the field that he overshot. And there was a couple throws to the sidelines where he takes an extra hitch in his drop back. And he drops back, steps, then throws. And if he just does the initial end of the drop back and then step into the throw, that ball is on time. But because he puts the little hitch in there, that causes the pass to be late. And those are the passes that end up getting broken up or at risk of potentially being intercepted, or just at the best, can limit how many yards after the catch the receiver can gain because the ball was just a half second later. So the defender had a half second to get closer, less separation, quicker to the tackle, et cetera, that makes life more difficult. But there's other throws where, when he's dropping back, his feet are just kind of moving around a little bit. They're not tight. They're not crisp. And as a result, he doesn't end up throwing from a perfectly balanced base. And so sometimes when you're generating that power from your lower body to your upper body, you can sail passes that way because you're not driving it down as much, because you're not as tight in your core when you're turning into that throw. And we don't need to get lost in the weeds of quarterback mechanics, but when your footwork is not perfect, sometimes it's fine. And sometimes you miss throws that otherwise you should be able to hit. And I think when you combine that with still the lack of anticipation at times that we talked about a little bit on yesterday's podcast, where it's just a lot of it's, the footwork, right? It's the hitch and then the throw. But sometimes you see him go through a progression and he's looking at the receiver, right? He goes through the progression like he's supposed to. He goes through it relatively quickly. He's not super slow through the progression, but he'll go from receiver 1 on the right to receiver 2 in the middle to receiver 3 in the middle to receiver 4 on the left, kind of scanning the field at a good pace. And he'll look right at receiver 2, when he's supposed to in the progression, and receiver 2 is open, and he doesn't pull the trigger. We're seeing him be more decisive as a quarterback, but he's still leaving meat on the bone there, right? There's still plays that he's not pulling the trigger on, and he ends up, taking the check down. And certainly that's okay when you're still able to win these games, when you still put up 28 points on the Detroit Lions, right? This is not a question of, are these things making Justin Fields a bad quarterback versus a good quarterback? It's, are these flaws we're still seeing in Justin Fields' game significant enough compared to what a number 1 overall pick type rookie quarterback might be able to provide you? The bar is different, right? The bar is not, do we think Justin Fields is any good? It's, is he better than these other quarterbacks? I feel like we're definitively seeing Justin Fields has, at worst, NFL starter quality quarterback ability. But at the same time, you think a number 1 overall pick quarterback can be more than that. And you wonder, what the ceiling is offensively with Justin Fields. How much better can he get? If we're seeing improvements in these other areas, but we're not seeing the anticipation really speeding up and being able to see those throws early, is that something you feel like you can teach a quarterback 3, 4, 5 years into his NFL career? Or is that something processing-wise that you kind of either developed at a young age and you got it, or you just don't and you got to live with it? And the footwork, we've seen quarterbacks improve footwork somewhat. I don't know that we've seen quarterbacks, 3 or 4 or 5 years into their career completely overhaul their footwork entirely. And to be fair, Luke Getsy tried to change a lot of Justin Fields' footwork, and maybe that kind of resets some of the habits in there so now he's when the footwork is a little bit sloppy, it's because he's still doing it. He's still learning the new way as opposed to maybe the old way he did it. And maybe you can either blame the offensive coordinator there or use that. The other way to look at it is maybe that means there's still room for improvement in that footwork. But I can't help but remember at the end of the Lions game, the first Lions game, when he got on the strip sack, he drifted in the pocket to the right, closer to Darnell Wright, to change the angle there. It's not his fault he got strip sacked, but he did a negative thing that helped perhaps contribute somewhat to the bad ending of that game. And, And the other thing too is it has only been 3 games that he's been back. And one of those games, the Bears did not score a touchdown. They beat the Minnesota Vikings, and the win is what matters. But it wasn't like that was an offensive performance that was absolutely dominant. Like we've seen him, Justin Fields has played really well against the Lions twice and did enough to win against the Vikings once. So there is still something to be said about these final 4 games, and particularly the Browns coming up this week, where they have a really good defense. Like, we thought maybe some of the other defenses they faced this season have been solid too, and certainly the Browns aren't the number 1 defense in the NFL, but it's going to be another good test. We've seen Myles Garrett and Justin Fields have a games that, especially the first one, not go well for Justin Fields. So I'm really curious to see how he does in this game against the Browns, because if it's another like Minnesota Vikings 12-10 type of performance where the Bears offense is moving the ball but not scoring touchdowns, it factors in. Again, the factor is not like, is he a good quarterback or is he a starting quarterback? Is he better than the number 1 overall pick that you could get at quarterback? And could the number 1 overall pick be better than that and not have, those types of footwork type issues, and not have, problems with anticipation and still be able to throw the ball downfield? Like, sure, the number 1 overall pick is not going to be as dynamic as a runner as Justin Fields. And I'm not here to argue about Caleb Williams and Drake May and stuff at this stage of the process, but like, certainly there are going to be things that Fields can do that the number 1 overall pick quarterback can't do. But if the number 1 overall pick quarterback can do some of the things passing wise that Fields can't, is that more valuable to your team, to your offense, to being able to get more playmakers involved? I mean, that's where this decision is so fascinating and so complicated, and not as simple as just like, what's your scouting report on Fields? Because it's weighing your Fields scouting report against your favorite rookie quarterback scouting report. And it also gets complicated when you start to have to factor money into it, with Justin Fields approaching the end of his rookie contract and approaching a market value quarterback contract. And all of a sudden, well, the rookie quarterback would stay cheap. Justin Fields, it's not about Justin Fields versus the rookie. It's Justin Fields at a big price tag versus a rookie at a cheap price tag in the salary cap space that comes with that. So we'll look at some of the other complicating factors in this decision, even beyond what we're seeing on the field, next on Locked On Bears. The Locked On Bears podcast is brought to you by our friends at PrizePicks, the best way to do daily fantasy sports. It's fast, it's easy, and it's a lot of fun. With PrizePicks, you pick 2 to 6 players and whether they will perform better or worse than their PrizePicks projections, and you can win up to 25 times your money just for getting your picks right. Unlike other daily fantasy sports where, you're setting a lineup and you got to go against 1,000 other people to try and have the first place lineup to get any kind of money out of it. No, with PrizePicks, it's you in complete control, and you've got the chance every week to score big at PrizePicks. It's a lot of fun. And it really gives you something extra to follow along with. Like, okay, how many rushing yards is he at? How many passing yards is he at? How many interceptions does this guy have? And it all brings you that much closer into the game. I love playing PrizePicks every week, especially when you can kind of take your Bears knowledge and make a little bit of money off of it as well. Try it for yourself. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use our promo code LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. That's an extra $100 for free to play with at prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Promo code LockedOnNFL. PrizePicks, daily fantasy sports made easy. Not much is going to make this decision easy for Ryan Poles this offseason, because if it were as simple as, is Justin Fields a fine NFL quarterback, I think the answer is yes there. It's do you pass up on whatever you think Justin Fields is for something that could be better potentially, or worse, potentially, as a rookie quarterback? But what starts to make this tricky is when you start to add some dollars into it. So this offseason, Justin Fields will be going from the 3rd year of his rookie contract into the 4th year of his rookie contract. And first-round picks are 4-year contracts with the 5th-year option. And it is this offseason, before your final season of your rookie contract, that teams decide whether or not they're going to accept or decline that 5th-year option. The 5th-year option is a lot more expensive than what the initial rookie quarterback contract is, but it's not as expensive as what quarterbacks, higher end starting level quarterbacks are getting on their second contracts after being successful on their rookie contract. So you're not totally in the tank financially on the 5th-year option. You've got, I guess, 2 more years of Justin Fields at a more affordable rate. But typically, what you see is if a quarterback plays well through their 4th year of their rookie contract, they will at some point in that process sign a new contract extension for a lot more money and never really end up playing on their 5th-year option because the salary will increase so much more by signing that contract extension before getting to your 5th-year option. And as it looks right now, when Justin Fields is ready for a contract extension, he's going to be a $40 million a year quarterback. Like, that's what Daniel Jones got from the New York Giants. Like, that's where the market's going to be, because Justin Fields can say, listen, if you're not going to pay me $40 million a year, I can go onto the open market and get a $40 million a year contract, which, by the way, puts him tied for 10th in the NFL. Like, we've reached the point now, like we've kind of lost it because we haven't seen the Bears give out a big quarterback contract since Jay Cutler got that 7-year deal in, when was that, 2013, 2012, 2011? No, it was 2011. Regardless, the Bears have not been in the big contract money game, but like, you know, Joe Burrow just got $55 million a year. Justin Herbert got $52 million a year. Lamar Jackson, $52 million a year. Hurts, $51. So like 40, or even a little more, it might even be a little above 40 for Justin Fields at this point, because you could say, oh, well, I'm better than Daniel Jones, so give me more than that. Say it's $42 million a year or whatever. Like, that's a lot of money, but that's not top 5 money. It's barely top 10 money. Like, and I'm not here to argue today, okay, is it 40, is it 42, or what the exact number is. The point is, it's going to be like a huge chunk of your salary cap. Whenever Justin Fields gets that next big contract, it's going to be a huge chunk. If he plays at the level he's playing right now against the Lions, right, where he's very good, looks like a starting NFL quarterback, someone's going to want to make him their starting quarterback if the Chicago Bears don't. That's $40 million out of your salary cap space that you then don't have to spend on other players, that you don't have then to, you know, sign. Like, you've got guys like Montez Sweat and DJ Moore under contract. That's, you know, those are each $20 million a year guys. You've got Jalen Johnson looking to become a $20 million a year guy. So that's 20, 40, 60 million in them, plus, you know, 40 plus million in Justin Fields. That's $100 million of your salary put into those 4 players, if assuming you re-sign those guys. The salary cap is 225-ish. So about half of your salary goes into those 4 players. Fields, Sweat, Moore, and then if they extend Jalen Johnson. Basically then, you don't have money to spend other big money on big players. Like, are those 4 players the 4 good enough cornerstone players that can win you a Super Bowl, right? Because at the end of the day, that's kind of the equation here, right? It's like, you want the quarterback and you want the team around him. If you're committing long-term big money, is this the group? Is that the 4 superstars? Jalen Johnson, DJ Moore, Montez Sweat, Justin Fields. Are those 4 guys good enough to be the core foundation to take you to a Super Bowl? If you have to surround those guys with guys that are going to be lesser than them, those are your 4 best guys. You're not going to get anybody better than them for any kind of price that you can fit under your salary cap there. Like, you're going to have to go maybe a little cheaper on some other positions. You might not be able to keep affording, Eddie Jackson at $14, $17 million a year, whatever he's currently making. You're going to have to keep going cheap at running back. You may have to keep drafting offensive linemen because eventually, Tevin Jenkins is going to need a contract extension in there. I mean, Darnell Mooney, who knows what's going to happen with him coming up next year. Like, Cole Kmet's already getting $12 million a year. Like, you're going to start adding players at a little lower caliber. You're not going to be able to keep adding big time playmakers. So you have to ask yourself, like, if I'm stuck with that large portion of my salary cap going to Justin Fields, can I build enough of a team around him? Is he a good enough quarterback that if I'm paying him that much money, that he's going to be good enough that the rest of the team around him not being quite as good is still enough for me to compete with the Super Bowl, compared to the number 1 overall pick quarterback, who's not going to be dirt cheap as a number 1 pick. It's a higher rookie contract, but it's still, not $40 million a year. I don't know what the exact salary spot is right now for the 2024 draft, but by the end of that contract, I think you're still pushing $10 million a year, but like, it's not $40 million a year. Like, Trevor Lawrence's contract, the cap hits are $6, $8, $10, and $12 million over the course of his contract. So around there, like, you start anywhere from like $7 to $15 million a year for that quarterback. Much more affordable. Still allows you to be able to sign big players and extend big players too, because that's the other thing. It's not even about going out and signing other big players. It's about giving contract extensions to the other young guys on your team that eventually, Jaquan Brisker is going to need a contract extension. We're talking down the line. If you're paying Fields $40 million a year, a couple of years from now, does Tevin Jenkins need a contract? Maybe Braxton Jones will eventually need a contract. Jaquan Brisker, maybe Kyler Gordon. Like, all of a sudden, these young guys that you want to start paying and keeping around, like, money becomes a little tight on who you keep and how much you're willing to spend. Like, that's what we see happens to a team like the Chiefs when they sign Patrick Mahomes and kind of have to move on from Tyreek Hill because you can't keep both of those guys and Chris Jones on defense and, a variety of, other guys that they've kind of had to, like, prioritize who do we keep that's expensive and who do we move on from. And is Justin Fields that good of a quarterback to say, yeah, we can afford to move on from some of these other guys because Fields is so good, we can still win with Fields and lesser guys around him. Like, I don't know that he's been that guy yet, but maybe you hope he can still be that guy or still grow to that guy. Like we talked about, he can still get better. He's not at his peak, and maybe a better offensive coordinator can start to get there. Or do you stop worrying about that and say rookie quarterback and load up all the talent around him and really help that rookie quarterback be in a better position to develop and grow than Fields was, who came into not a great situation. Then Mitch Trubisky, he kind of, his first year was a bad situation, much better situation his second year, but to be more ready for a rookie quarterback where the Bears haven't historically been great at bringing in a rookie quarterback into a really good situation. Now the Bears are getting to a much better situation to bring in a rookie quarterback. I can't help but wonder if there's one other alternative here. Like we talked a couple weeks ago about keeping Fields and drafting a quarterback. I wonder if, we sort of have this ultimatum being put in front of us right now as you either draft the quarterback this year or go all in on Fields. We might want to do a whole podcast about this still down the line here, but like I do think there's a reality here where this year the Bears, if the Bears traded the number one overall pick again and got another future first round pick next year for 2025, and then you bring Fields back and he struggles again, you don't have to pay him right away. You could still maybe get a quarterback in 2025 with your extra first round picks that you get from trading down this year again, just like we kind of were thinking for this season. Like we can keep playing that game of get a high draft pick, trade down, and have a shot at the quarterback next year. Get a high draft pick, trade down, and have a shot at the quarterback next year. Like you can keep doing that. The concern is that the 2025 quarterback class might not be as good as the 2024 quarterback class, but we always think the quarterback class is going to be good, and we're never usually right about which guys are good and which guys aren't, but the number one overall picks do tend to be the ones that generally, as a probability, work better than the other quarterbacks draft, and that's where the thing feels so valuable for the Chicago Bears when it's sitting right in your hands with the opportunity to get a quarterback that many, many people are falling in love with. It's a really fascinating decision that the Bears have to make this offseason. This is not the last time we'll be talking about it, certainly throughout the course of the offseason. So when we get updates on Fields, when we hear more from Ryan Poles, when these decisions start to shake out a little bit more, we'll break it all down for you right here on the Locked On Bears podcast. You can find it right here on Locked On Bears podcast. Usually I have a phrase, I'm totally blanking on what I say for Locked On Bears podcast. Thanks for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. I don't know why I'm hitting a total wall here, but thank you for making Locked On Bears your first listen today. Follow along with Locked On Bears on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. Really appreciate you making Locked On Bears your first listen today. I hope the conversation around this is interesting to you, right? I'm not necessarily coming out as like you got to keep Fields or you got to draft the quarterback. Let's see how these last 4 games go. And then also take our time going through these quarterbacks and then make the decision. Then we'll do all of that in coming up episodes of the Locked On Bears. Tomorrow will be crossover Thursday with our friends from Locked On Browns, getting the scoop on everything going on in Cleveland with Joe Flacco back in the mix. That'll be fun. And with a good Browns defense as well, we'll learn more about what's going on over there. We'll put together a game plan for Chicago Bears victory on Friday, and then we'll break down the Bears game next week on Monday. So keep coming back, keep making Locked On Bears your first listen. And every time, I promise, I'm going to give you another opportunity to bear down.